Alright guys, so we have finished to code this timeout error handling over here, and now let's trying to solve this one. But if we are trying to hit the load and the response is actually sending a success response, but the JSON is empty, so it could happen, right? For example, if we are trying to hit this one, maybe at the character 1, and we don't get any response, but rather we are getting like some kind of empty data or JSON over there. So basically we need to handle that, and let's see how we can solve that in task-driven development. So let's go from there and let's create another function, and this function will be has a different error type, like for example returns error or error on empty JSON data. So let's try to create the function task load, and we should return some kind of error on, it's actually 200 HTTP response, for example. And the specific error type in this case will be some kind of empty JSON. So what we can do is we should return like some kind of invalid JSON error on 200 response, right? So what we can do at the moment is we can try to copy here, right? The setup, and we need to create the SUT here, and we basically need to load again and catch the error. And let's say we need to returning some kind of invalid JSON error over here, and that's pretty much the setup on here. And we need to change the sample response closure, and in this case we need to have like some kind of network error response with 200 and with an empty data, right? And what we can do is we can create an empty data and convert that as data at iterate, and I pretty much happy with exclamation mark over here because we are in the testing scope and it is not a production code anyway, so I think that's fine. Working on here, it's gonna be always correct, right? So let's try and command U, and we can see that the build is failing because we don't have the specific error type. And let's create the error type above, invalid JSON error, and let's command U again. And now we can see that the task is not green, and that's pretty much good because that's the first tab again in task-driven development. Why it is not green? Basically because this invalid JSON error is actually not being returned in this one, because we are forcefully return the timeout error. So if we try to return the invalid JSON error, this new task will be green, but this old task will fail, right? So it's actually not a good idea to returning this invalid JSON error directly. So what we can do is we need to talk to the provider over here, and basically we need to return some kind of a specific error on a specific Moya case. So for example, we need to return the timeout error when Moya has error because we are stubbing the network error here, and we need to return this specific error, which is the invalid JSON error when we are got success 200 response, right? So what we can do right now is talk to the provider, and the provider is this one dot we want to request here, and the request would be fetch character ID, so we definitely need ID, right? So basically we need to inject ID over here, and the completion will be some kind of result, right? And the result is a success with a response and a failure with some kind of Moya error. And as I said earlier, to cover this case, the network error case, we basically need to return the timeout error in this one. So we can just forcefully throwing an error dot timeout error, and in this response, let me fix this a little bit. We basically need to returning the the invalid JSON error. So we can throw, not return, the error dot invalid JSON error, and we don't need the JSON response at the moment, and we don't need this error as well because we don't use it anyway. So let's remove that, and let's hit Command U, and we can see that the compiler is still complaining. First, it is complaining about the ID, so we need to give some ID over here. Let's choose, I don't know, some random ID 1, and this one is gonna be the same. Let's choose ID 1 here. Let's hit Command U again. You can see that compiler is still complaining, and it's actually helping us this way. It says that the function needs to throw basically, but we don't throw anything, but we throw inside the closure. So we need to somehow to bridge or to adapt this API into this throwing API here. So what we can do, we can just return with check throwing continuation over here. So in this case, it will this function, it will be converting our completion block and returning a correct value with its own provided API over here. So we can go and hit enter again, and let's name this into some kind of continuation here, and let's paste our code over here. As you can see that we can, instead of throwing, we can say that we are calling the continuation dot resume with some kind of a failure case, and the failure case will be the invalid JSON error. And in this timeout case, what we can do is continuation dot resume or throwing here with a specific timeout error. And I think that's how we can solve this, right? And let's see. Now we need to support the async, so let's fix that. So now the function is async, and if we try to keep running the function right now, Command U, it needs to have a try. And of course, in the test here, we need to handle the async or await here. Let's fix that, async, and here we need to await here, and I believe in this function as well. So let's hit Command U again. The compiler is telling us that we need to mark this function as async, and we need to wait on the load. So let's fix that. All right, and this is one of the benefit of test-driven development, because the compiler is basically trying to help us, and now the compiler is prime. And what else? I think let's try. Yep, I think this one needs to have another await, right? And let's hit the Command U. I think that's pretty much safe. And now we can see that our refactoring is pretty much good in terms of bridging this completion closure word into some kind of async function in Swift concurrency API. I think this one is covered in a good manner, and I think we can commit. Let's commit. Oh, I think I can check this one for empty JSON. So let's commit. Returns invalid JSON error on empty JSON. Right. Now, well, you just witnessed the power of refactoring. If we have a plenty much good tasks, then basically refactoring is just easy as it was, because if we change the implementation around here, the behavior it's still the same. So the task is guaranteeing the behavior is not changed while we are doing the refactoring stuff. So that's pretty much powerful. And let's move around, and I noticed that we haven't handled the server error like the 500. So I think it's a good idea to handle the 500. So let's add another case here. So it is success, but server error or server is busy, right? So let's try to add another case. Fun test load returns server error on 500 response, CPU response. All right, we need to mark that as async as well. Of course. And then what we can do is we can try to copy what's inside here. Let me copy, let me paste. Right, and right now what we need to do is we need to change that into 500, and hopefully we get the server error. Right, and let's hit Command U again, and yep, it is not able to compile because we don't have the server error, or case. Now what we can do is we can just add this server error, and I think it's pretty much good to compile at least, and hit Command U, and I believe it will be returning false here. It is not able to retrieve the server error because in the production code we are forcefully returning the invalidation error instead of checking whether we are in a specific status code, right? So how to handle that? Of course, we need to get the HTTP code from the response. So what we can do is we can get response, and we can check if the response.status code is actually equal to 500, and if it is 500, we can return some kind of server error. Otherwise, at the moment, we can just return invalid JSON error right here, and that's the minimum way to make the task pass, I believe. And let's press the Command U again, and let's see what happened. I believe, yep, it's pretty much green, and I think it's a good time to commit. Let's commit. Oh, I forgot to add this one, so let's add this one real quick. Handle server error case. All right, let's commit. And now we are pretty much covering the 3 items over here. Before we jump out to another cases here, but what I want to inform you guys, I think we have a lot of repetition, right? So we basically need to do some kind of heavy lifting setup over here just to execute the same thing, right? So what we can do, we can try to simplify the setup over here so that we can have like actually pretty nice setup on the very top. So let's try to refactor, and the goal is to make some kind of SUT here, and the different things on this 3 here is only about the sample endpoint closure, right? So this one, the sample endpoint closure, is network error, and this one is the 500 with the empty data, and this endpoint closure is 200. So what we can do is we can inject the sample endpoint closure, and I think a good way to inject the exact sample endpoint closure is going to the endpoint, and we can click to the endpoint, and we can try to copy the initializer signature over here, copy, and let's paste to the make SUT, right? So the idea is to create the make SUT method, make SUT, and this is the injection, and of course we need to return the remote character service, and in this we basically want to inject this guy over here, the sample endpoint closure should be like this. So this is the goal, and this sample endpoint closure needs to have some type, and I believe it is under the endpoint of the Moya endpoint, and I believe that's how we can solve that. And let's try to move the code away from here to bottom, and we're going to inject the sample endpoint closure, of course, and we need to return the SUT there. So that's how we can refactor things. And let's try to run. We can see that we still and should be in the green state over here. That's pretty good. And let's add a mark so that we can differentiate between the helpers and the test code. Let's run again. All right, still green, and let's try to refactor the other one. So here we want to have a SUT, which is the make SUT, and we need to inject this closure over here. And let's remove anything over here. Let's hit Command U. You can see that we still have green stats, which is pretty good here. And how about this one? We can do the same thing. Let's copy and replace this one, and let's replace this closure with this one. So I'm gonna replace it with this, and I don't think I need this anymore. Much cleaner. And yeah, basically we just refactor things without breaking the test code. And that's a little bit demonstration about how we can refactor things without changing the behavior, right? So yeah, that's pretty much good. And let's commit add HTTP factory method. Hit commit. All right, we can do. I think it's a good idea to cover different from a JSON here, right? So let's cover this scenario. So what I mean by this is, what if we got the correct response here, for example, a JSON, but the format is a little bit different. So for example, the name is another object, or the status will be another object. That's not the correct JSON API, right? Or JSON response, what I mean. And we basically need to cover that scenario. So what we can do is we can create another func task load returns invalid JSON error or JSON format error on 200 HTTP response, and we can specify this one is on invalid JSON format 200 HTTP response. And I think it is really stated things. And I noticed that we are missing information here, because it's actually saying that this invalid JSON format error should be handled for an empty data. So we need to specify an empty data over here. So we can rename this function, return this valid JSON error on invalid or empty JSON, or we can just rename it on the very last of the function when has empty JSON, like this. And let's cut this one and let's commit, because we are changing things, right? So let's commit things, and I think this should be rename a test function. That's pretty good. And let's paste the code. And now what we need to do, we need to copy and change this one. And this one is when has invalid JSON format data or JSON format. And the setup is gonna be pretty much the same, so I'm gonna copy and paste. And this one, we need to inject some kind of invalid JSON format, right? So what I can do is create the invalid JSON format data. And what I can do is create the invalid JSON format data is actually equal to let's see if we can do that correctly over here. We need to convert things into a data using UTF-8, and we need to fill something in between, right? So the goal is to fetch this ID, name, status, species, and I don't know about gender, maybe we can include that, and also with the image over here. So we can just copy most of the things over here and wrap that under an object. And let's copy around there. Let's copy the image here, and let's remove unnecessary things, right? So basically we are trying to get these things here. And what if the name is, like, for example, inside on another object, right? For example, like this, and we will have some kind of value, or the JSON will be like the first is the Rick, and the last name would be its last name, the Sanchez. And of course this one is not gonna be should be not able to parse this one, right? So hopefully we are getting the invalid JSON format on 200 response. I think we are good to go, and let's hit Command U again. Let's see. All right, we are good, and I believe we can commit. And I know it is not valid yet because we haven't trying to decode anything around here, right? So what we can do is we can just continue until we met this condition, fetch character here, right? So if we met that condition, it means that it is a time to refactor our production code over here. But since we are in the green state, we can say that we are good to commit here. So let's try to commit. Returns invalid JSON error on 200 response when has invalid JSON format. All right, let's commit. And now I think it's a good idea to I think it's a good time to basically fetch the real things or parse real things. We should returns character on 200 response when has valid JSON format, right? So we basically need to copy things from here, and this one should be a valid one, so the name should be Rick Sanchez. Let me copy the name, and let's see, we can rename this one valid JSON data or JSON format data. And the idea is to have character, right? Yeah, the idea to have the character, and we can assert the characters. Character dot name or ID should be 1 in this case, and the name character dot name should be Rick Sanchez. Oops. The same will be goes with the other status, like status, species, and gender, image. I'm gonna do that in a pretty fast way after this, so I'm gonna skip this. Alright, that's how I believe how we can solve this issue, but let's see what happened here. I think we need to give a try over here, and I'm gonna make sure that everything is good. So I think should be try await. Yeah, it is right. Try await. All right. And the error here exists because of we basically don't have the arguments yet. And this one is because of the load does not returning any character type. So we can deal with that later. And now we basically need to handle this, right? So we are expecting that we are in here in this line, and if we got to this line, we basically need to make the test fail, so we can use this exit fail instead, expecting to decode but got error instead. So I think that's pretty much good setup. Let's hit Command again, and right, we basically need to return the character and create the character type. So that's a good idea. Let's create the character. So basically need to synchronize, but we need to return a character. I forgot the order, but let's just make the compiler is telling us. So we can create a character here, and the character will have some kind of name, right? And let me do that in real quick. So this is the character type over here, and we don't need this assert equal over there, and I believe that's pretty much safe. And let's see if we got any error, and let's see. All right, I think that's pretty good, and let's hit Command U, and you can see that I believe this test should be okay failing. Why is that? Because we are forcing to return some kind of error in our production code, right? We are not decoding things yet, and that's pretty good. We got the first step of test-driven development, which is the red state, right? In the red state, we basically pretty much good to go to aim to the next step, which is green. So the goal is to make this task to green. So what we can do, if we basically can check if we are able to somehow parse things over here, right? So in this statement, what we can do is we can hopefully get the character, right? When we are trying to call a JSON decoder dot decode into some kind of character type from the response.data, and yeah, we basically can call the continuation and resume with a success result of a character, I believe. If we fail to do that, we need to return this invalidation error, and we can do the do catch block to from that. So I think this is the correct way, and let's see if my compiler friend is helping me on this one. So let's hit Command U, and of course, what is this? This character is not decodable, so what we can do is to make the character to become decodable here. What else? And we have another red here. Oh, it's from the previous one. So let's hit Command U and see what happened. All right, we're pretty much good. We are green, and there is some other warning, and let's see how we can solve this. This try await. Oh, we need to store it somewhere, so let's store it to nowhere using the syntax in here, and let's do the same. I think we can do the same on every single line of this try await, or I think we can just trying to copy here and find and replace try await to become something like this, underscore and equal, and we are going to replace things, replace, and this one is okay. Done, and let's hit Command U. All right, we are pretty much good. So let's check this one, different format JSON. Oh, I believe I haven't checked this one and this one, right? So I believe what we just did is to fetch the correct response over here, and I think that's pretty good. Yep. Let's try to commit that we basically can return the correct character on correct 200 response JSON format here. And I believe it covers most of the scenario. And one of the not scenario left is what if we are not found a character, for example, character is given ID, and I believe the correct JSON response for that is this one. Let's see, is 287, and we will found, oh, okay, we see with character of ID 300. Oh, we still have that. So let me try to make it fail. See, this one is the value, so I'm gonna fetch this one plus 1, which gonna gives us some kind of error. I don't think they are giving us the status code over here. So for example, if they may be returning either 201 or I don't know, some kind of 400, depends on the backend, right? So let's assume that it is actually 201. We don't find the character. So what we can do is we can handle this inside our code around here. Okay, let's go and start to handle the not found character scenario. So we can create that into like some kind of task, load returns not found character error or not found error, and I believe we can call the async as well, and let's try to copy and paste, or we can basically try to adjust on this case, right? Because we need to catch the error, and we basically need to make the JSON is like this, the error at the moment here. And I'm not sure about the 200 because basically the documentation does not state anything about the status code, but let's assume that it's actually 201, and this one should be not in validation format data, but maybe not found character JSON data. Copy, and if we had got 201, and we should get the not found error here, and that's the pretty much the setup. And we're not expecting the timeout. Maybe we can rename this one later. This one should be expecting not found character error, but we got the other instead. So let's try to hit Command U. Alright, we are still not able to compile because we don't have this type or the case. So let's create the case not found character error, and let's try to run, and of course our test will be failing. Oops, so my Xcode just broke. So let's get the Xcode back in real quick. Alright, very good to go. Let's hit Command U again and see what happened. We should be able to see not passing test on here, but the other one, the other test should be succeed. I mean, like in here it is actually succeed, and this one is failing, and that's pretty much good. And the idea is to return the not found character on 201, right? So what we can do, we can hard code it in here. So if the response is status code is 201, what we can do is call the continuation with the resum with the result failure that we are actually not found any character on that, right? So that's how I believe we can solve that. And let's run the test again. Let's see what happened. And yep, we still have like a green state, and I think that's pretty much how we can deal with that. Let's check this check mark here, and I believe we can commit handle not found error, commit here. And I believe that's pretty much how we can deal with networking part of this application. And we've learned how we can do the test-driven development from the very beginning. I mean, like from the handling the timeout error, and then the server error, and any different type of error, and different type of some JSON response over here, and the edge cases as well, like these edge cases and these edge cases as well. And I think that's pretty good. And one thing that we can do, maybe we can try to improve this valid JSON format, because it is not a complete JSON format, right? So what we can do is we can copy all of the JSON format that is available to us, and maybe we can try to paste over there, and let's see what happened if we are basically got this JSON format. Let's see if it is failing, that we can just refactor. Then if it is failing, then I think that's pretty much great. Yep, I think that's a good idea. And what we can do is maybe we can commit and refactor on maybe in this video or the next video. Let's commit first using complete valid JSON format to parse character. Alright, I think we are pretty much good on that, and I think it's a good idea to always refactor things, and I could do that in this video, or maybe this video is already like too long. Maybe I'm gonna do that in the next video, because we see that we have done some part of refactoring over here, but of course we need to refactor our test code, because maybe we can like simplify this one into compute property or a function, so it is like more short in terms of this function length. And of course in this one, because I don't like to see this one, maybe in this video I'm gonna do that refactoring stuff, or maybe in the next part. And of course we still need to do some kind of a refactoring over here, because I don't like the seeing of this, right? So yeah, stay tuned in the next part and see you in the next video.